The Lives of the Saints by Father Alban Butler, June 15th. Saint Germaine Cousin. A simple, humble girl of poor birth, but so extraordinarily enlightened by the gifts of wisdom and understanding, and so remarkable for her transcendental virtues, that she shone like a star of great magnitude, not only in her native France, but in the whole Catholic Church. Such is the description of Saint Germaine Cousin set forth in the apostolic brief that placed her in the number of the blessed. She was the daughter of Lorenzo Cousin, a farmer. She was born around 1579 in the town of Pibrac, a hamlet near Toulouse. Her mother, Marie Laroche, died before the little girl took her first steps. From childhood she suffered continuous illnesses. She was scrofulous, and her right hand was deformed, and without strength. Her father did not love her, and her stepmother detested her sincerely. Lorenzo's second wife treated her stepdaughter with contempt from the beginning, but after the birth of her own children, the contempt turned into cruelty. Germaine lived in the house as a servant, or rather as a slave, entirely separated from her stepbrothers and sisters. After, the poor girl was forced to sleep in the stable, to feed herself with the leftovers of the food, and as they did not want to have her around, they sent her to look after the sheep from dawn to dusk. She seemed destined to be a shepherdess for the rest of her life. Germaine accepted her destiny as if she deserved it, and God used her resignation and humility to lead her to the highest perfection. In the solitude of the fields before nature, she learned to communicate with her divine Creator, and through Him she knew everything she needed. God spoke to her soul, as He always speaks to the poor and pure of heart, and she lived consciously in His presence. She would not have missed Mass for anything in the world. If she heard the bells ringing when she was in the fields, she would plant her staff on the ground, entrust the care of the flock to her guardian angel, and run to church. And it never happened that, during her absence, any sheep had strayed from the flock, or that any of the wolves prowling in the neighboring forest of Bocone had dared to devour a lamb. She went to communion as often as possible, and all the inhabitants of the village admired her fervor. Although she did not take part in the social life of her neighbors and never took part with the girls of her own age, she used to gather the little children around her to teach them the simple truths of religion and to make them love God. The people of the place took at first the side of Germaine's family and were disposed to despise and mock her, but gradually rumors began to circulate, more and more insistent, about supernatural things that happened to her and that filled everyone with admiration. To get to the church from the pasture fields, the girl had to cross a stream that often swelled because of the rains. On one occasion, the stream, which had become a torrent, closed the way to strong and brave men who did not dare to cross it. In the village, people were waiting in front of the church, and the news spread by word of mouth. "Sister will not come to Mass today. It is impossible for her to come." However, the girl appeared in time for the holy sacrifice, and two peasants who were watching by the brook affirmed that they had seen her cross, and that the waters had opened before her, just as those of the Red Sea opened to give way to Moses and the people of Israel. No doubt it will be thought that, for someone as poor as Germaine, it was materially impossible to perform physical works of mercy. However, love always finds a way to show itself, and the little food she was given was always shared with the beggars. And even that was reproached. One cold winter morning, the stepmother chased Germaine with a stick in her hand and shouted that she was a thief because she had hidden some crusts of bread in her apron. When the woman caught up with her, all the neighbors who had gathered saw that Germaine dropped her apron, and what was in it were not pieces of bread, but fresh white flowers. From then on, contempt turned to veneration, and all the inhabitants of Pibrac realized that a saint lived among them. Even her father and stepmother changed their ways and asked Germaine to take her rightful place in the household, but the girl preferred to continue her life as before. But she did not live much longer. Her frail body was worn out, her work on earth was done, and one morning her corpse was found lying on the straw under the stairwell. She had just turned 22 years old. Her body, buried in the church of Pibrac, was accidentally exhumed in 1644, 43 years after her death, and was found perfectly well preserved. She was then placed inside a sarcophagus that was placed in the sacristy, and 16 years later she was preserved intact and flexible. This circumstance and the many miracles attributed to her were the reasons why an official recognition of her cult was requested. However, due to the French Revolution and other obstacles, Her beatification and canonization were postponed until the pontificate of Pius IX. On June 15th, the feast day of Saint Germaine, a pilgrimage is made every year to the church of Pibrac, where her relics are still preserved.